3.
Hi, my name is Stephen Ware, and I'm going to show you guys the most common way to send somebody to the dentist. I'm going to discuss the critical elements of the right straight in boxing. In order to teach the right straight, you have to go over the critical elements of a boxing stance. First, we're going to start from the base up. Feet are going to be shoulder width apart. Your knees are going to be slightly bent. Elbows tucked in. Hands up to the head. Eyes forward. Chin tucked.
And
now I want to teach the critical elements of the right straight. Okay? Again, back to my stance, which we're going to call ready position. So I'm in ready position right now. So whenever I throw, we're going to go from the base up again. Okay, so I start off by pushing off my back leg. Since I'm right-handed, my back leg is, of course, my right leg. So I'll push off my right leg and rotate my right foot. I like to call this squashing the boat. Okay, so rotating off the right foot, you're going to open your hips. When you open your hips, you're going to also open your shoulders towards your opponent. When I open my shoulders towards my opponent, I extend my right arm. When I extend my right arm, I roll over my shoulder with my left hand placed against my temple to protect my face. Now, whenever I roll over my shoulder, what I want to do is push completely through my opponent. Boom. And now I'll demonstrate that all together.
Three. Go.
Okay, now we have Chris here. Chris is part of the cognitive stage at the very beginning level of boxing, and we're teaching him the critical elements. Okay? We've already taught him the critical elements of his stance, or his ready position, as we said earlier. Now I'm going to have him demonstrate a few right straights on the bag, and we're going to go through and we're going to fix the problems he's having with his critical elements. Alright, Chris, go ahead in your ready position stance. Hands up. Alright, now throw a right straight. Right straight. What you're doing is, now we're having a problem with the mind-muscle connection, everything coming off at the same time. What Chris is doing is he's rotating his bottom foot, his right foot, before he's throwing out his shoulder. Okay? So now we're going to have him restart and throw the same thing, but I'm going to fix, of course, his mechanics, because he knows what I just said. He's rotating his back foot before he releases his punch and rotates his shoulder and hits. Okay, so everything at the same time, whenever you push off, you go through, rotate, and you release the shoulders. So hands up, so everything at the same time, push and release. Okay. Rotate right. Speed that up. All at the same time. Good. And that's it for that, but I just want to bring up the fact that the constant repetition with a stationary object is the best thing to use for somebody at the beginning stages. Whenever you do that, you build the mind-muscle connection and the proper mechanics whenever you go into different stages of your skill levels.
And
now we're going to go over the associative stage. The associative stage is between the pro level, the autonomous stage, and the beginner level stage. Alright, the associative stage is where you start to put together the mind-muscle connection. You're not exactly there, but you're also not doing thinking, then output. Okay? So now what we're going to do is go through situations where he's going to move towards me, then throw the punch like you would an opponent. Okay, so Chris, with your hands up, we go. Forward, 2, and throw. Back, and throw. And throw. Back, and throw. Good. Now in this type of situation, I can give him feedback as we're throwing because I'm in control of the output of the exercise. So I notice that Chris is pulling his right hand out before he throws the punch. What I'm going to tell him is that he needs to keep it tucked, protect his face, and throw straight from its guard. Okay? So now we're going to re-go over that since he knows now what he needs to fix. And we're going to go through the same drill. So, steps towards me, throws. Good. Now make sure you turn over that shoulder. Back, throw. Forward, throw. Over, throw. Good, good. Now, in this stage, since I'm controlling the situation, I can stop it. At the beginning level stage, when we're on the bag, I can stop more frequently to alter his mechanics and his critical elements. Right. Okay, now I want to go over the autonomous stage. First, I want to take the time to tell the difference between part-time training and whole training. Okay, whenever you're in the autonomous stage, what you'll do is part-time and whole training. Okay, in all these stages, you do part-time and whole training, but we'll start off from the bottom. In the bottom stage of training, you will do more part-time, where you're working on your critical elements and you're working on your mind-muscle connection, and then you'll go into gradual whole training, in which you have an opponent you're moving around with, but you're not getting hit with very many punches. Then you move on to the middle stage. The middle stage, you'll have an equal amount of part-time and whole training, in which you'll have an opponent which is throwing punches at you. You'll be moving and learning how to throw punches with him and defend. And then you'll also be doing the part-time training, in which you work on your critical elements and work on the fluidity of your combinations. Now, in the very last stage, the associative stage, you work on your combinations and you work on whole training together to prepare for fights. Alright, to prepare strategies, to prepare everything else. But since we're going with the right straight, I'm going to throw combinations with my right straight involved in and keeping the same mechanics. Okay? So, I'm going to show a few of them. So now we're going to sum up. In the cognitive stage, we learn basic mechanics, critical elements, and a small part of full-time training. The associative stage, we learn critical elements, we learn how to move as a fighter, then we go into full-time training and situation-based stuff. Then the autonomous stage. The autonomous stage, we go through combinations, fight strategy, we go through tape and study of other fighters, and we go through competition and full-time training in 100% real time, trying to win against your opponent. Okay, now we're going to go over the ways that coaches and trainers benefit from these types of stages. Okay. Now, during these stages, you can create certain checklists for your students to what stage gets you to the next. All right. For example, in the lower stage, the cognitive stage, you can create a checklist on the critical elements it takes to perform the task at the optimum output. Okay, so you go through your checklist with your student and what he needs to learn to develop himself to the next stage. All right. Now, Now the associative stage. Now whenever you're in the associative stage, you also have your checklist and your progression. Okay? During the associative stage, it's hard to checklist. Sparring time, but when you videotape it, you can go through this sparring time and go through the checklist with your student, and you can help him learn how to fix these problems himself. Help him go through his own checklist whenever he's competing. Help him go through, fix the critical elements that he has. Okay, and now the autonomous stage is a little different because an autonomous fighter can correct his own mistakes. You shouldn't be giving corrections to your autonomous fighter unless he asks for it, or unless you see something that you don't think he is seeing. Okay, so again, he would still probably have a checklist so that he can make sure he's doing things right, and he'll go through his own checklist of things when he's watching films of other fighters and what he can use against them. Okay, now I appreciate you guys watching this video, and that's a wrap.